Hello, I'm Tim Couch. I'm with the Salvie Island Drainage District. We're just out of town. We have an 18-mile levee system that protects just over 11,000 acres, mostly farmland. We are going to go with the Corps. Actually, we're going to have a board meeting this week to make that decision. I'm less than 2 minutes. Some of the issues we're facing, currently our accreditation doesn't expire till 2017, and our certification with the Corps is still in place, and we're good standing there. So we're not facing a lot of the same problems that other districts like Reed is with MCDD or Pin 1 and Pin 2 there. Since we're such a rural area and out of the way, we've been, over the years, just continuing to make progress and keep up on our encroachments, which would be the biggest problem. And so we feel like we're pretty confident that things are going to go well. Again, you know, it's like eating the elephant. It's one bite at a time. We're not sure how we're going to get our funding put together and what's going to happen as we go down the road. As we complete one task, that might turn into to show us the problem for the next task. So it's continuing to change plans, make plans as you continue to go. How's that, Steve? Thank you.
You know, your strategy is what we're calling adaptive management, which is the plan is only good for about a year, and over the course of the year you update it to deal with your new realities. I was just going to comment on your encroachment issues as what you identified as probably your biggest issue, and we certainly see that everywhere in all the different areas that I'm working in. California actually recently passed new legislation to give local agencies more authority to deal with encroachments, and actually to impose civil penalties for people who didn't respond after receiving cease and desist orders. We just had this problem that, hey, it's my backyard and that levee's been there forever, and damn it, that's a great place for my patio to be. Or literally, you mean I can't put the wine cellar into the levee? And we found a wine cellar dug into the levee. The wine was quite good, I understand. So this issue of encroachments is huge, and we're seeing it everywhere. And I think both FEMA and the Corps are justified in being really concerned about it, because especially for these levees that are quite stout and long-standing, the biggest issues often are where people are doing harm to the levee, not where the levee itself needs updating. So it's great that your focus is on encroachments.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So further on the encroachment issue, we're in Scappoose. I'm a board member in Scappoose. And we had our periodic inspection in 2010. And so there was 250 items on it. And we probably have 100 left that are encroachments, and we've sent letters to landowners and get little or no response. How do you decide between making them do something versus just as a district as a whole, just take care of it, get it done, and not fight about it?
Well, the clients that I have that have had to make that decision have done the cost-benefit analysis. Often it is cheaper to just go and do it yourself than to try to make them do it. Problem is once you start doing it yourself, then everybody else wants you to do it for theirs as well. And so the districts that I work with have, some of them have developed some cost-sharing approaches. For example, if someone has a fence that is on the district's property, in order to motivate people to allow that fence to be taken out, the district will put in the new fence, but the homeowner has to demolish the old fence. Kind of a sharing of the work to get people engaged in it. In other cases where it was the last link to finish the chain, the district has just gone ahead and done the work. And in still other places, the district has used whatever statutory tools it has to try to actually enforce the standard to set the tone. If the very first few you do, you can do through some sort of enforcement hearing or some sort of a quiet title action if you're based on real estate rights, that can get neighbors talking and then generate a lot more cooperation down the line.
We have a lot that were okay when they were done, and then they added, they wanted nothing within the toe of the dike, and now they want 50 feet each side. So that's brought a whole bunch of things, and landowners going, hey, it's been there
Yeah, and my recollection is that some of the core positions on PL 8499 and encroachments look not generically to the 15 feet, but what are the real estate rights? And if there was a 15-foot real estate right, then the 15 foot has to be cleared. If there was a 10-foot real estate right, then 10 feet has to be cleared. If there was no real estate right, then there might be the ability to have the encroachments even closer, so long as there's visibility. So I've seen cases where there's been a little bit more flexibility from the Corps on that issue, and I don't have that reference offhand, but Corps folks may know it, or if not, I could look it up.
Scott, the encroachment issue is one that I know that we've talked about a lot in the Portland area with the levees along the Columbia. And we haven't really gotten to a lot of the major encroachment issues yet. But there's, I guess, a question, I think, on the part of a lot of folks about, well, how do you start addressing those issues without creating a political firestorm, given the history, and the people have been there for a long time, et cetera, and have there been major political firestorms, or have there been some areas, districts, whatever, that have approached that issue well and have maybe created some lessons learned that we can all learn from?
Well, I know of one district, it's actually where my house is, that created the firestorm, and they've been completely gun shy ever since to do anything about these issues. The way that district has approached it since then is every year they send out a letter that says, we are coming through and doing slope reshaping. And if you would like us to do a little bit of work behind your house, as long as we're already there, let us know. And then the superintendent goes out and walks and knocks on doors and reinforces it. And every year they get 5 or 6 people who agree, and there might be some vegetation at the bottom of the levee, and as long as they're reshaping the slope, they pull out the vegetation and that gets done. I know another district that has adopted an approach that they will put up with all encroachments, but every time the property sells, it needs to be cleaned up. And that really works well where the encroachments are on a real estate that's owned by the local district. And the local district can basically put some sort of notice in the title, tell the real estate agents, tell the homeowners, and they don't all get caught, but a lot of them, when the house gets sold, then the encroachment comes out, and that's been another approach that's worked. I should say one last thing, which is, if we're talking about this from a core perspective, it's because it's a federally authorized levy. And for some districts, it may simply not pay to remain a federally authorized levy. The disadvantages of being in the federal system may outweigh the benefits depending upon your community. If you're a highly urbanized community and can raise some money, the PL 8499 rehabilitation program probably pays to stay in, because the federal support in the event of a failure is significant. If you're primarily an irrigation or agricultural district, the cost to meet those federal standards just may not pay, and you may be chasing them forever. Now, you can't just go over to Kevin and say, please take me out of the federal system. It takes an act of Congress. But those WRDA bills I mentioned deauthorize projects all the time. And so some people think of it as the nuclear option. I actually don't. I actually think of it as a sensible cost-benefit analysis. Does it make sense? Do I get enough by staying in, or am I spending money the wrong way? And I'll give you an example. I have a client, Reclamation District 563. It's in the Delta, Tyler Island. It has about 20 miles of levee, and it's shaped like a teardrop. And the left side of the district are federally authorized project levies, and the right side are not federally authorized project levies. So the water goes on both sides. The water doesn't know whether it's a project levy or not. And as may not surprise you, the project levy is in better condition, because when it became federalized, the Corps came in and did improvements to it. It's stouter, it's taller, the encroachments were removed primarily from it at the time, and because it was done within the last 50 years, there's less mature vegetation on it. The other levee on the other side of the island is 100 years old with outhouses built into it and crap piled on top of it, and it's narrower and shorter. Well, every year when the district gets its inspection report from the Corps notes all these problems with the project levy. And the Corps is right, there are problems with the project levy. And then the district engineer goes out and says, I got a levy that's a 7 that's got 15 problems on it, and I got a levy that's a 3 that's got 45 problems on it. To stay in PL 8499, I got to spend the money on the better levy, even though I'm at higher level of risk from the other side. To me, that's a perfect situation to say, does federal make sense anymore? Does it make sense for me to be in this program? Or am I wasting my money on the better levy when I should be putting it to a higher level protection on the weaker levy? And I just think we shouldn't forget that it's a choice whether to be a federal levy or not. And having the Corps as a partner makes a lot of sense in many cases, and it doesn't make sense in others.
Mm-hmm. I'm an engineer with MCDD, and I was just wondering if you've seen cases where there are maybe two jurisdictions overlapping, and this is again an encroachment question, where the, kind of like the FEMA and Corps standards, maybe they don't really match up and work well, and how that was handled.
I have, but I've always seen them where one's stricter than the other, and so we just default to the stricter one. In terms of construction, I've seen cases where Corps standards might be different than another agency standard. So as I mentioned, in California, much of the work is cost shared by the state, and the state has adopted standards on how that work should be done. And there are cases where you will get a material mix and compression standard from the state that is different than the material mix and compression standard from the Corps, and you can't meet both of them because they're kind of up and down, and one's down and up, and you can't, and then we just have to bring the people into the room and negotiate. And that's been reasonably effective in being able to do so. And despite having pretty clear standards, the Corps also often has the flexibility, when appropriately documented, to vary from those standards for a good reason, and the state of California does as well, and so we've been able to bring people in. I haven't seen it with an encroachment. Can you be more specific about what the hypothetical is?
Well, specifically, the city of Portland would allow development on the levees, and we can't have that, so.
Yeah, I just kind of go back to a concept that someone has to have the more restrictive standard, and if you want to go with the least restrictive, you're going to lose the benefits of the more restrictive. So if the city wants to develop, and that means you're not going to meet a FEMA standard, you can develop all you want as long as you're elevating the structure and then you're screwing everybody who's behind the levee. That's a scientific term, screwing everyone.